All right, welcome to the Built in the Bronx podcast. This is the pilot episode. My name is Maximilian Hill. I am the host. Thank you all for joining us. And on the Built in the Bronx podcast, we bring you the tech stars of tomorrow, homegrown right here at Lehman College in the Bronx, New York. Today, we have a special guest. His name is Dan Weiner. Dan, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Max?
Living the dream, man. Living the dream. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Of course.
So Dan is a current computer science student here at Lehman College who is slated to graduate in 2024, correct?
That's right.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what brought you to Lehman?
So I started at WCC. I was working after high school, and I wanted to get my degree. I was done with working jobs, so after I got my associates at WCC, I needed to get to a 4-year college, and it turned out that my aunt and my mother both went to Lehman, and I needed to go to a local affordable college, and so Lehman was the first choice. So I applied, and I got into the CS program, which was great because I had my associates in CS, getting your associates, you don't really know exactly what you want to do yet. I mean, maybe some people do, but I didn't. So they had a lot of specialty classes going into my junior year. And so I signed up for a video game programming class and a machine learning class just to test out a couple things and see what really interests me. And I knew that I like video games because I play video games. I've made a couple on Unity at that point. I've never done machine learning up to that point, but obviously I knew it was blowing up. So I liked the video game programming class. It was great. We made video games engines from scratch, and we made video games on our engines. I took that with Professor Brian Murphy. But
shout out to Professor Brian Murphy.
Professor Brian Murphy, he's great. But the machine learning class is what really, really resonated with me. I knew immediately it was what I wanted to do. Just because I just felt it when I took it, and I took that class with Professor Liang Zhao.
So did you know? And I learned this at the Christmas party. Professor Zhao is from the same area in China that Confucius was from.
I did not know that. It must be why he's so wise.
Yeah,
he's really a great professor. He's really guided me a lot on my journey here at Lehman. I mean, I'm still in touch with him all the time. I had an internship recently we're going to talk about soon, and I was in touch with him the whole time. He's a great guy.
So Swathi and I we were really fortunate to get to work with you this past semester. And you were actually one of the first students we got to work with. And you were actually able to land a great internship at Columbia, right?
That's right.
So tell us a little bit about, first, how did you get it? How did you get the internship at Columbia?
Well, at the time, I was cold applying online, everywhere, on LinkedIn, on Google, just everywhere.
So were you just sending out like you just blasting out your resume?
During the winter break, I think I sent out about 312 applications. I counted it, and I received 312 rejections. That's just how it worked. I think I'm still receiving rejections. I received one from Microsoft recently from that time, and that was like a year ago. So
very low percentage strategy, right?
0% for me. I mean, cold applying just didn't work. It just doesn't work. And I had a good resume. I had decent material. It's just not high percentage, like you said. But then Jennifer Laird reached out to me. She is a professor here, and she is also the CS3 ambassador. CS3 is a program, the Smart Streets program. It's a program that's a couple colleges like Lehman, Columbia, I believe Rutgers, and Florida University is in it. And it's a very large program that's funded by the NSF and Amazon, National Science Foundation and Amazon. So she gave me an application for an internship at Columbia University, and I filled that out, and I got that position.
So tip for any students that are listening, you know, would you agree, Dan, that the best strategy is to, really scour your network, reach out to your network, see if they know of anyone that's hiring, and then can introduce you to someone who can introduce you to opportunity?
In my experience, cold applying gets you 0% and network is 100%. That's just me so far. So yes, scour your network.
Yeah. And I think with LinkedIn, it's never been easier to get in touch with people.
That's true.
If you spent any time on LinkedIn, you see that you can look at someone's profile and you could see, oh, we have these connections in common. And then a lot of times you could say, do you know, when you're dealing with someone who has a really big network, sometimes it's just like a loose connection. But so cold applying, not a good strategy.
Right. And you don't have to have the hugest network either. You have to start somewhere. I started my LinkedIn about a year ago, and I started with no connections. I had to just connect with people everywhere. And, now I think I have about 60 connections. I connected with everybody at my internship, as many people as I can, and just build them up. And, then you'll run into those people with 500 plus connections, and you'll feel a little insignificant, but connect with them and see what they have to offer.
Yeah. So how has the internship been?
The internship was amazing. Honestly, I learned so much. So the project we were working on, because I was working in the SEAL lab, CEAL, which is the Computer-Enabled Abilities Lab, which works on HCI projects, which are human-computer interaction projects, basically accessibility for blind and low vision users, basically making computers accessible for that populace. And so what we were doing this time was the CS3 project, Smart Streets, meaning we were making streets safer for blind and low vision pedestrians. So what we had was a test bed. Since Columbia has a ton of property in Manhattan, they actually have an intersection where they have a bunch of cameras set up. And so the project was actually repurposing existing camera infrastructure like speed cameras and security cameras and using them as navigation devices for blind and low vision pedestrians in place of GPS navigation systems that are very inaccurate, can be off by tens of meters, which doesn't matter for somebody with sight who can make that up just by looking, but for somebody without sight, that's no good. So the camera can locate you exactly in your environment. So we had, not to go on, but we had our own intersection. We have our own intersection. Sorry, the project is still going on. And we are basically working with this testbed intersection and building the system. It's actually almost built. We're moving on to pilot studies soon with real people.
That's awesome. So you're building something that's literally, hopefully, going to save some people's lives, right?
I mean, hopefully, and hopefully it's better than what's out there.
Yeah. And that, I think, so you're building something that's going to help blind pedestrians navigate the mean streets of Manhattan, right?
Yeah, well, it's not just Manhattan.
Yeah.
It's wherever there's cameras. The idea is there's cameras everywhere now. All big cities have cameras everywhere. And, they're basically almost 100% surveilled. So if you can see the street, you can see the person in the street, and we can locate that person and make sure that they're not going to collide into another person or a bike or a car, and that they're not veering off of the crosswalk, and that they are not taking the wrong turn. And then they can also explore their environment by scrubbing their finger, because it uses their smartphone as a way to interact with the system. Obviously, you need a way to interact with the system. And, of course, everyone has a smartphone, so they can scrub a map of their area to see what's around them, allowing them more spontaneous trips, because these people usually have to plan everything out ahead of time. They have to know where everything is ahead of time. Otherwise, they can't do it.
Yeah. So tell me about what was your part in this project? What were you in charge of?
So I was working on the system a lot of the time, and I basically got my hands in everything. I worked on the system in the formative study. So at first I was working on, like when I first got there, I was working on the code. I jumped right into the code. So that was great. It was Python, machine learning, all the stuff I really wanted to get into, computer vision, a lot of fun stuff. We were working with a computer vision model called Clip, which is from OpenAI, really cutting edge stuff. And so I was working on that. I had like my own functions that I had to make and like, abstracting stuff out. So I'm making my own little files and pushing it to the main branch. And then I also got to speak to our test subjects. We had 6 people who spoke to us about these systems and what they use currently. And we wanted to basically figure out what they need, what they're lacking, what they're lacking currently. And, we basically did interviews. And on top of that, all of that. It was a lot of fun.
So you said it's still ongoing. The project's still ongoing, right?
Right. We've had one submission, and I also wrote some of the paper too, because we had a submission so far. There's multiple conferences that we're submitting it to. We got accepted to the first conference. I wrote some of that, but
Very exciting.
it was really cool. But yes, it is still ongoing.
And you mentioned a couple computer languages. So which languages were they?
Everything is written in Python.
Okay.
There are some data storage, some of the data is stored in JSON, which we basically just have to iterate through. There are some MQTT messages, which was new to me. It's just a way of transferring information from the camera to the system, and they're also using this language called GStreamer to speed up the system because we needed to ramp up the frame rate. But it's mostly implemented in Python.
Okay, good.
Oh, and obviously the app is done in Swift.
Okay,
because
good.
it's an iOS app.
Good. So for any Lehman students that are listening, what I guess languages would you suggest they brush up on?
It depends on what you want to do. There are a couple of sites. I could definitely put them in the show notes, but there are a couple of sites that put the most popular languages. Definitely get to know Python. Python is a great language to always know. I started with C++, and I feel like it's a very hard language that really got me prepared for anything. But, if you know Python and you know maybe Java or C++ on top of that, everything else is going to come a lot easier. Because those are 2 object-oriented languages, and you're going to be using object-oriented languages for pretty much anything you do, as long as you're, doing general 90% of the stuff out there. So those 2 languages are good.
Okay, great. Tell us about the other interns that you worked with. What did they come from other schools?
So
were there any that you built some good relationships with?
Yeah. So I worked with in my lab. There was the other Shore Fellow. There was like 40 Shore Fellows from all over.
So what does Shore stand for again?
SURE stands for Shore?
Undergraduate Research Experience?
Yes.
I forget what the S stands for.
That is a good question. I have it right here. It stands for Shore Symposium. I don't have it right here, but
Okay.
It stands for Undergraduate Research Experience, and so basically, my lab partner there was only 2 Shore Fellows in my lab. My lab partner, who was a Shore Fellow, she was from California, from Lehman College, and she worked basically on the application and the studies, while I did the system and the studies. There were also other undergraduate research experience people there. There was multiple undergraduate research experiences there. There was somebody from NYU and 2 other freshmen there, they were rising sophomores. I was very surprised to see that. They did not know a lot, but they really tried their hardest. Because as a sophomore, a rising sophomore, you do not know a ton unless you have been programming your whole life. So they really tried their best, but and I lived with one guy from California who went to Pepperdine, somebody who went to Howard in D.C., a Husky from Connecticut, UConn, and somebody else who went to Lehman.
So
Muhammad from Lehman.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So this is all. I love seeing Lehman graduates mixing it up with all these people from all these great schools.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's wonderful. So, anybody in particular at Lehman that you'd like to give a shout out to that helped you on your path?
Anybody at Lehman? Definitely Professor Liang Zhao. He was huge. Jennifer Laird, and you guys at CIE.
Okay.
For sure.
Give Swathi a shout out.
Swathi for sure. You, Max, and Swathi.
And you already gave, Brian Murphy.
Brian Murphy, of course, he was
Very
great.
good. Very
But
good.
yeah, I think you guys, the professors and the support staff. I mean, I'm not sure. You guys are just like faculty.
Very good. So, Dan, I just want to say thank you so much for coming back to Lehman and joining us on the Built in the Bronx podcast. We are so proud of you, and we're really excited to see, what this opportunity at, Columbia University, one of the greatest schools in the world, is going to lead to for you. And we're all rooting for you. And is there a way, if any students or recruiters wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Sure. There is my LinkedIn, which I guess we'll put in the show notes.
So it's Daniel Weiner.
Daniel Weiner from
On Lehman College.
Lehman College.
Okay.
It's student at City of University of New York.
Okay,
Lehman
great.
College. That has my email. There's also the SEAL Lab at Columbia University has my stuff at if you go to the people section, I'm there. I'm like in the 3rd or 4th row. You'll see me, Dan Weiner, and that has my LinkedIn and my email as well.
Okay, great. So we're going to share, we'll share the details on builtinthebronx.com. And for any student or any recruiter who wants to, reach out to Dan, learn more about Dan, check out builtinthebronx.com. So, Dan, thanks again for coming.
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. All right. That's our episode for today. And I hope everyone enjoyed the interview with Dan, and looking forward to the next one. Thank you all.